Hundreds of people lined the streets today for the funeral of a soldier killed in Afghanistan.
Private Aidan Howell was on patrol in Helmand province just 3 days after Christmas when he was killed by a roadside bomb. He was just 19 years old, a happy young man known to his family as Sunshine Boy. Today he was buried in his hometown of Desborough in Northamptonshire.
Tears fell with the rain in Desborough today. A family, a regiment, a town said goodbye. A military funeral for a teenage rifleman described as a leader among men.
He was a tall, imposing young man who exuded confidence and cheerfulness and good humour, qualities which drew people to him and inspired confidence in others, qualities which are remarkable in a man for his age and experience, certainly, which makes the loss, if possible, to be even more sad than it is.
More than 300 filed into the church for a private service. Many more squeezed into a hall to listen via speakers.
Aidan left home as a young carefree boy, but he was sadly taken from us as a genuine and honourable young man.
In a tribute, Aidan's sister Leanne described his cheeky grin, his larger-than-life personality. Their mother, she said, called him her sunshine boy because whatever he did, right or wrong, the sun always shone. And her father had not only lost the perfect son, he'd lost his best football buddy. Aidan Howell was killed by an explosion in Helmand in December. He'd always wanted to be a soldier. Friends describe him as always smiling, someone who loved nights on the town and Leeds United Football Club.
I've been at school with him all the way through Months High.
And what type of bloke was he?
He was like decent, genuine. He was always up for a laugh. He was the legend, really.
A number of our lads are dying, and we should show respect and support them.
My husband's over in Afghanistan, so I just wanted to sort of support them all, really.
As Rifleman Howell was driven to his final resting place, spontaneous applause, recognition of his and his family's sacrifice. Mike Cartwright, BBC Look East, Desborough.
Two men from Luton have appeared in court today accused of confronting Muslim demonstrators at a homecoming parade for soldiers in March last year. Brian Kelso and Kevin Carroll were part of a crowd which came face-to-face with an anti-war protest. They deny public order charges. 5 Muslim men were convicted of a similar offence 2 weeks ago. Well, Mark Worthington was in court today. He's in Luton now.
Well, the charges against Kevin Carroll and Brian Kelso all stem from a homecoming parade by the Royal Anglian Regiment through Luton Town Centre in March last year. Now, on that day, hundreds of well-wishers turned out to welcome the soldiers, but at the same time, a group of local Muslims decided to hold an anti-war protest, and some of the slogans they were shouting were repeated in court again today. They were calling the soldiers murderers, rapists and baby killers. Now, the reason that Brian Kelso and Kevin Carroll are standing trial is because of how they reacted to that protest. The accusation is that they were at the vanguard of a hostile crowd which confronted the protesters, and the specific charge is that their behaviour and the insults that they shouted would have caused the protesters, or indeed any passers-by, harassment, alarm or distress.
And Mark, both men gave evidence today.
That's right. Both men deny the charges, as you said, but they did have their opportunity in court this afternoon to give their side of the story. They both admit that they were part of that crowd. They both admit to shouting expletives and insults, but both say that what they did was a reaction to a protest that they say was causing them distress. Now, Kevin Carroll said he didn't feel he had done anything wrong. He said that he was outraged and shocked by the protest, shocked that it was being allowed to continue, and that he felt he just couldn't let it go unchallenged. Brian Kelso did concede that perhaps he had gone a little over the top, but he said he thought it was right to give the protesters a piece of his mind. Now, we have heard that 5 of those Muslim protesters were found guilty almost 2 weeks ago of the same offence, but Brian Kelso and Kevin Carroll will have to wait until March to find out if the judge finds their actions as having been of a similar severity.
Mark, thank you very much.
An inquest has heard that 2 more patients dealt with by the out-of-hours provider Take Care Now were given potentially dangerous overdoses. 70-year-old David Gray from Maney in Cambridgeshire died after a fatal dose of diamorphine. 2 other incidents have now emerged in Suffolk involving different doctors but the same drug and the same out-of-hours provider.
Stuart and Rory Gray arriving to hear a damning assessment of the abilities of the doctor who administered the fatal overdose to their father. Locum Daniel Ubani from Germany had been working his first shift for the out-of-hours service Take Care Now. Dr Andrew Sayward drew up a report for Cambridgeshire Police on Daniel Ubani's visits to patients. Dr Sayward said Mr Gray had a history of health problems and frequently demanded pethidine as pain relief. But he described Dr Ubani's dealings with him as a patient as incompetent. His errors catastrophic.
He was a disaster. He was dangerous. He caused the death of a patient. He allowed another to die in inappropriate circumstances, and he completely inappropriately treated a third. He was just a complete disaster. He gave a man 10 times or 20 times the dose of diamorphine when he probably didn't need it anyway. And that was frankly dangerous practice.
Are you shocked that he's still practising in Germany?
Astounded. He certainly won't be allowed to practice in this country, but apparently under German law, if he only had a suspended sentence for the crime of what we thought was manslaughter, he would be allowed to practice in Germany, and I find this stunning.
The inquest heard that after David Gray's death, 2 other incidents, both in Suffolk, had come to light. In both, Take Care Now patients had been given dangerous, potentially fatal doses of diamorphine. Dr Ubani's action in pumping 100 milligrams into David Gray was described by one witness as an accident waiting to happen. Kim Riley, BBC Look East, Wisbeach.
Still to come in Look East, a look at this weekend's football lineup and the fans flying out to support their rugby heroes.
Julie will have the weekend weather. And a hospital in Essex is playing a leading role in the international trials for a new cancer drug. Nearly half the patients in Britain being given the drug are doing so in Colchester.
It's this one that makes you sleepy.
It's the sleepy one.
That's the sleepy one, yeah.
David Hanton has prostate cancer. Recently it spread to the base of his spine. Every 3 weeks he has chemotherapy at Essex County Hospital in Colchester. But he's also agreed to take this drug, dasatinib, as part of an international trial.
If people didn't do it, then obviously they'd never find a cure for cancer. So I'm doing it hoping that, you know, it's going to help other people as well. And, you know, it's a way forward, I think. If they didn't have trials, they'd never get rid of cancer, I don't think.
Prostate cancer is one of the most common cancers in men in the UK. There are around 35,000 diagnoses each year. The hope is this drug will help in cases where that cancer has spread elsewhere.
There's no guarantee it will work, and trials of this type aren't without risk. What's unusual is that out of 25 patients in the UK taking part, 10 come from this hospital.
Our patient population is very well read, they're up to date, they've got access to information now that they didn't used to have in terms of the internet and through the press, for example, and they want to take part in studies. They know sometimes that studies don't necessarily translate into a benefit for them personally, but actually does add to the evidence for other patients in years to come.
The only words I do lose me.
There's good news. A scan shows David's cancer is stable. But it could be another 18 months before doctors will be able to say whether the new drug played a part. Richard Daniel, BBC Look East, Colchester.
The MP for 2 cousins in jail in